Now, usually courses, they start with an introduction, and usually that introduction is good vibes. But for this introduction, I need to make something very clear from the beginning. Many of us, we have difficult parents. And some of us can even say that we have incredibly difficult parents. But I want you to know that everything you're about to learn in this course applies to 99.9% of all parents in the world today. Only in super special cases do some of the rulings that I mention maybe perhaps change the rights of your parents. And we're talking the level of something like sexual abuse here. But like I said, everything that you learn here will apply to most parents in the world today. And the reason why I start with this point is that we live in a very strange time. And we live in a time where a lot of people have this mindset that the parents must give in order to receive from us. I am shattering this mindset right from the very beginning because this concept is completely incorrect Islamically, and I want you to know that from the get-go so that we can all build our foundations from the exact same position. So for the sake of being a student of this program, guys, and for the sake of benefiting from it, I want you all to be very confident that your parents are of this majority, inshallah ta'ala, because they probably are. All right? Now we're ready to get started. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Welcome to this amazing course on the topic of Birrul Walidain. There's the positive, good vibes for you, inshallah ta'ala. Now, Birrul Walidain is probably one of the most heavily emphasized topics in Islam. But at the same time, it's also one of the most misunderstood, which kind of shows you just how important studying this topic is. Now, what exactly is Birrul Walidain? Birrul Walidain does not have a direct translation. Rather, it's a compilation of multiple different definitions. So Birrul Walidain includes things like obedience to your parents, listening to them, doing what they want you to do, excellence towards them, going above and beyond, being gentle with them, loving, compassionate, sincere. All of these kind of different definitions, a culmination of them is what Birrul Walidain is. And for the sake of simplicity, you might hear me say throughout the program, honoring your parents. Whenever you hear me say honoring your parents, I'm referring to Birrul Walidain. I'll probably use these two terms interchangeably, inshallah ta'ala. Now, before we get into any specifics as to what exactly Birrul Walidain is and what it looks like, I want to first lay the foundation so that we all understand just how important Islamically this topic is. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through 4 different reasons, inshallah ta'ala, that should be more than enough to shake the hearts and make you realize that you're pursuing a very noble path by studying this course, inshallah ta'ala. The very first reason is to know that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, he said, رِضَى الرَّبِّ فِي رِضَى الْوَالِدِ وَسَخَطُ الرَّبِّ fi sakhatul walid, that the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in the pleasure of the parents, and the anger of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in the anger of the parents. Meaning that if you make your parents happy through honoring them and you see them smile, then this is a sign that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is happy with you. And if you make your parents angry by dishonoring them and you see them angry at you, then you should be terrified, because this is a sign that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is angry with you too. And you see, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is happy with you, you actually speed up the blessings you get from Him such that you taste it in this life before the next. For example, you might see barakah in your health. You get about your day with mental clarity, with tranquility. You're overcome by this peace that can't be explained. You find barakah in your wealth such that your business is doing incredibly well and you just feel happy when you go to work, and so on and so forth. You might see barakah in your time where you realize that when you wake up, you're very productive. You get a lot of good deeds done and you don't have any good taste towards bad deeds. You might find this barakah in your worship such that when you stand to pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or you're doing dhikr or reading the Quran, you have this khushu'. And at the end of it, when you pass away and return back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you enter Jannah. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is angry with you, you speed up His punishment that you get from Him such that you taste it in this life before the next too. So you might start noticing your time has no barakah. So you sit throughout the day scrolling through social media, TikTok after TikTok, committing sins. You might realize that you have toxic relationships in your life. Your children might hate you. Your friends might hate you. Your spouse might be giving you a hard time. And the root cause of that could very well be uquq, which is the opposite of birr, which is dishonoring your parents. And although you might have a business which is bringing in millions of pounds, you still feel stressed, anxious, financially constricted. And finally, which is probably the worst one, your heart becomes hard. Worship becomes a burden. It becomes a chore. It becomes something you don't want to do. You delay your prayers. You busy yourself with things which are not important, even worse, sins. And when you pass away, in the akhirah, you have an even worse punishment. So that is the first reason. It's a very, very serious reason as to why this topic is so important. The second reason is very, very interesting. Did you know that if we open the Quran and inspect page after page from start to finish, you will not find a single verse in the entire Quran where Allah commands you to be grateful to anyone except Him and your parents? Did you know that? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Anishkur li wa liwalidayk. Be grateful to me, Allah, and your parents. Nowhere else in the Quran does Allah say, be grateful to so and so or such and such. It's either Allah and your parents. And I'm going to give you a definition of gratitude, which I think you should all memorize. And this is basically where you give back part of the blessing that you were given by that person. Gratitude is when you give back part of that blessing that you were given by that person. Since your parents literally gave you life, which is the greatest blessing anyone can have, the absolute bare minimum is that you fulfill their rights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has gave them, which is exactly what Birrul Walidain is. You see, this point is very, very deep. And even then, when you do fulfill their rights, you would not make up even a fraction of what they deserve. Because what can make up for you coming into existence and living this life? And the companions, they understood this very, very well, better than me and you, subhanAllah. Such that one time, Ibn Umar, radiallahu anhu, he saw someone doing tawaf around the Kaaba, and he had his mother on his back. He was carrying his mother. Now, of course, if you've been to Umrah, you know what doing tawaf is like nowadays. Imagine you have 50 kilograms, 60 kilograms on your shoulders, and you're doing that 7 times, going around the Kaaba 7 times. When he finished and he was tired and he was sweating, he went up to Ibn Umar and he said to him, do you think I've repaid my mother for what she's done for me? Ibn Umar, he said, no chance, not even for a single pang of pregnancy. And this is the reality. There is absolutely nothing that you can do to make up for what your parents have done to you. Your mother went through so much hardship, extreme hardship, while she was carrying you, and she literally brought you into existence. And when you came out in the very first year of your existence, what did you do? All you did was cry, scream, throw up everywhere, relieve yourself everywhere. And what did they do? They spent their time selflessly cleaning after you day and night and making sure everything is perfect around you so that you can thrive and grow. And as you guys grew up more and more and the years passed, your parents had countless sleepless nights, and they worked so hard to make sure that you were clean and provided for and protected. You literally sucked up their energy whilst you didn't even realize, and you made them weak only for you to then grow up, become independent, and be able to navigate your way through this world and enjoy the blessings of going out with your friends, having, food in a restaurant, creating memories, laughing, sharing loving moments, and basically experiencing life to its fullest, subhanAllah. All because your parents did all of that for you. So as you can see, gratitude towards them through Birrul Walidain is the absolute least that we can do for them, no matter what. And that is the second reason. The third reason is that you should notice that in many of the verses where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He tells us to worship Him and not associate partners with Him, in the exact same verse, Allah commands us to do something special. وَاعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْئًا. Worship Allah and do not associate partners with Him. وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا. And be good to your parents. In the exact same breath where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to worship Him, which is the greatest command, and then commands us not to associate partners with Him, which is the greatest sin, in the same breath, He then commands us to treat our parents with excellence. Do you see how the placement of this command truly highlights how important this topic is? And that's the third reason. As for reason 4, you should know, and of course this is the greatest reason, that Birrul Walidain is one of the greatest ways to not just enter the gates of Jannah, but to achieve the highest ranks of Jannah. Listen to these verses in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, إِنَّ الْأَبْرَارَ لَفِي نَعِيمٍ. Unquestionably the abrar will be in bliss. Abrar. That sounds familiar. Bir, abrar, right? Abrar means the righteous, the people of goodness, the people of piety. Birrul Walidain comes from this word. So Birrul Walidain enters this term, if that makes sense. So unquestionably, the abrar will be in bliss, and people who do Birrul Walidain fall under that. عَلَى الْأَرَائِكِ يَنْظُرُونَ. On adorned couches gazing around. Look at subhanAllah, the beautiful imagery here. تَعْرِفُ فِي وُجُوهِهِمْ نَظْرَةَ النَّعِيمِ يُسْقَوْنَ مِنْ رَحِيقٍ مَخْتُومٍ. You'll recognize on their faces the glow of delight, and they'll be given a drink of sealed pure wine, ختامه مسك, whose last sip will smell like musk. وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ. So let the competition begin for those who compete. SubhanAllah. How beautiful are these verses. Look at how Allah mentions abrar, and then goes into details by painting you a nice little image of what you're going to get if you are of these people who are abrar. And I want you to pay attention to the very last verse where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ. And in this is a competition for those who compete. Why should we reflect on this? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here has said competition. And I want to ask you a question. Are competitions made to be easy, guys? Of course not. Competitions are not made to be easy. That's why it is a competition. If it was easy, it would not be a competition. Likewise, Birrul Walidain can sometimes be incredibly difficult. You might have such difficult parents that they make it so hard for you to be good to them, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that this is all part of the competition. And only those who compete, they will have the pleasure of entering Jannah and getting into the highest ranks. And one thing that you guys should all know is that the greater the struggle, the greater the reward. If you struggle really hard because you have very, very difficult parents, then know that your birr is going to get you way more rewards than someone who has very good parents that make it easy for you to be birr to them. Does that make sense? And one reflection I want to share before we continue that my sheikh shared with me, something very powerful. He said, perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has tested you with difficult parents to bring your ranks higher so that you're closer to Him in Jannah for eternity. He said, perhaps your good deeds that you do in this life are not going to be enough for you to achieve the level that Allah wants you to be in Jannah. So He's inflicted you with the test of difficult parents or any other test in your life such that this hardship that you go through elevates you more and brings you closer to Him for eternity. What greater blessing is there than that, subhanAllah? So I want you to know that you should never ever stop competing with regards to this, and that sums up reason number 4. So by now, alhamdulillah, you should truly understand how important the topic of Birrul Walidain is. But a small request from me is that I don't want you to just listen to this knowledge. I want you to rush to apply it and to rush to teach it to other people as well. So I don't want you to just listen and be like, okay, that was a nice lecture and go away. I want you to literally take everything you learn, apply it, and teach other people about it. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Man dalla ala khayrin falahu mithlu ajri fa'ilih." Whoever guides someone to do good will have the exact same reward as the one who did that good. Since you're literally rectifying people's dunya and akhirah by teaching them such an important topic, there's going to be lots of rewards for you in this, inshallah, from you applying it and helping other people apply it too. Okay, so now is the time to begin to truly understand what the topic of Birrul Walidain is deeply and how it looks practically. Now, the scholars have broken down this topic into 4 main categories to make it easy for you guys to understand it deeply. Birrul Walidain can be split into number 1, birr of your speech. So having birr towards them with your speech. Number 2, birr of your heart. Number 3, birr of your body. And number 4, birr of your money. Speech, heart, body, money. You can show Birrul Walidain and break it down into these 4 different sections. And today we're going to start with number 1, which is birr of your speech.